Hello, binary babes and bros. This is Christian for the Duality of Wrestling. Thanking you for joining me again on another episode of the podcast. And today we're going to be discussing the Dynamite from July 1st. We're at a weird period where we're in between named shows. We're obviously just coming off Forbidden Door 2026, and we're 1 week removed away from Beach Break 2026 Dynamite for next week. So this was just billed as a regular Dynamite, but there were a lot of headlining things here. This was kind of a different episode than is usual. Obviously, we started off pretty hot with the World Championship being defended, and we closed with the TBS Championship being determined. But oddly, this was a show that was pretty light on actual wrestling content. There were only 4 real matches on this card, and it was mostly otherwise backstage promos or in-ring promos. A lot of storyline vehicle enhancements here, which is to be expected coming off a pay-per-view, but AEW is usually not quite this light on in-ring action on a main Dynamite week. So let's talk about the show. I'll save some of the wrestling discussion for later. We started off with a promo that that happened after the pay-per-view that I really enjoyed, and I really wish we'd see more of on wrestling television as a whole. It was the opening segment with Will Ospreay and Alex Windsor sort of walking hand in hand in the backstage area following the big win at Forbidden Door, stopped by Renee Paquette to get their reactions. Eventually, you have Jon Moxley come out of a dressing room and sort of congratulate Will and offer him a spot in the Death Riders long term. Obviously, at this point, both Renee and Alex Windsor have vacated, so this discussion can happen. Moxley closes by saying, "I'm proud of you. You can put this patch on. You can ride with me anywhere." I liked that. And then immediately afterwards, you had, from a different direction, Kenny Omega coming to, congratulate Will as well, talk about, him being offered the patch. Will sort of bristles a little bit at Kenny's approach, saying, "You're not my dad. Let me figure this out." It ends amicably enough until Maxwell Jacob Friedman shows up and sort of stokes the flame a little bit for both his current-ish feud in Kenny Omega and his future feud with Will Ospreay. All of these guys, I think this worked really well for me because all of these characters and people are, in the diegetic world of wrestling, kayfabe, whatever you want to call it, they are all walking around in the backstage area together, commiserating. They are, workplace adjacent, to use the phrase Cody Rhodes used recently. They're they're all together. So why are we all showing them cordoned off as individuals? Let's show them walking around and interacting with each other backstage, more than just your one-off. One guy or girl meets another guy or girl, they either talk amicably or bicker about whatever program's going on. No, this showed you had an interview turn into interstable discussion, to also longtime rival discussion between both Moxley and Kenny and Will. Then you had a future feud discussion between all three guys. Like, this was really nuanced and layered, and it added a lot of depth to story and got you to invest much more mentally and emotionally in what's going on. This is one of the things AEW is doing a great job at right now, is the depth in their main event level feuds. You had, right after this, you had MJF versus Mark Briscoe for the World Championship. So you've already got two guys battling it out for the World Championship. Then you're already talking about Will Ospreay as a long-term contender that's going to meet the champion at All In. You've got Kenny Omega orbiting around the World Championship and obviously making his intentions very well known throughout this episode. You have Andrade El Idolo, who is still in a feud with Maxwell Jacob Friedman. We're probably going to see an intermediary feud between him and the Don Callis family, as was, delineated in this episode. And then you've still got a guy like Kevin Knight, who was promised a world championship shot for being involved in Team DCMJF at Forbidden Door. So you have 6 guys in and around the World Heavyweight Championship right now, all who have independent stories, all who have months upon months worth of build. This is excellent writing. This is excellent booking. And it shows that you don't have to just run one contender and one program at a time the way we as a wrestling community are sometimes conditioned to. You can have multiple layers and multiple areas where storylines can converge and divide and mature on their own throughout the weeks and months leading up to their own individual programs and don't always have to be capitulated one at a time. This is excellent work on AEW's part, and I really think it's worth a lot of praise for how Tony Khan and his booking and writing team have handled this. From somebody who knows a decent bit about writing, my undergrad and graduate degrees are both writing centric. Well done here, AEW. This is excellent work. So let's jump into MJF Mark Briscoe for the AEW World Championship. As expected, MJF retains here via a heat seeker, and it was a clean win. This was a clean victory for Max. This was really crisp on both guys' part, despite obviously being a little bit battered coming off of Forbidden Door. Mark Briscoe was busted open again within like 2 minutes into this match. But both guys executed everything really well. Everything was crisp. Everything was physical. Really, really solid showing from both guys. That did a lot to enhance both men. Mark Briscoe put himself closer to being regularly main event adjacent. Again, I don't totally buy him at that level, but he put in some good work to really try his best to entrench himself moving up the card, and I really respect how well he's done at that. It's not my cup of tea, but that doesn't mean it isn't others. So well done on Briscoe's part, and MJF getting a clean win here is perfect. It puts a good bookend to the mini feud he had with Mark Briscoe. It gets the win back that he lost last year before he took his maybe not hair related hiatus. It puts a pin nicely in that, and it elevates MJF back up after losing at Forbidden Door, after losing the championship on Dynamite a while back to Darby Allin. It puts him closer to that, like, untouchable tier, which is where he should be as a world champion. He even kicked out of the J Driller, which commentary was really heavily putting over something he hadn't done, really almost nobody has done. MJF kicked out of the J Driller here, so that was a really great advancement for the way the storyline has been told. Love it. Love what this accomplished. The match itself was a fun, not like standout or anything, but very solid. Really great work by both competitors. I enjoyed it. The end came with the reversal of a J Driller into an Alabama Slam from MJF, who sort of then backed Mark Briscoe up onto the apron through the ropes, allowing him to hit the Heat Seeker and get the clean win. We had an assault afterwards, as is typical with MJF, went after Briscoe with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. That brought out Kenny Omega, who had said earlier in that, multi-man promo that he was going to be, coming for him and knocking down his door if he survived Mark Briscoe. Kenny was good to his word, and that moved us on from the win over Mark Briscoe to moving into Kenny Omega into that spot, which I also really like and makes sense given that leading up to the Zack Sabre Jr. match at Forbidden Door, Kenny talked about that being his redemption. He leaned hard into redemption. Later on in the promo, he cuts at the end of the show, he talks about needing redemption for how he acted as world champion before. He said he needed to go to a dark place to be able to get the job done. He needed help. He needed to be somebody he didn't like staring back at him in the mirror. And that also is really good storytelling for the Redemption pay-per-view, which I assumed was where we were going to get the World Championship match, but given the events that take place later, it's not really going to be any kind of a spoiler to say that's not the case. We are getting Kenny Omega versus MJF for the World Heavyweight Championship next week at Beach Break Dynamite. Now, the big caveat for this was the only reason Maxwell Jacob Friedman agreed to this was that Kenny Omega had to put on the line his ability to challenge for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, not just while Max holds it, but forever. Same deal as Hangman, same deal as Cody Rhodes. Both of those were referenced multiple times throughout this show, and the build of the show is based around, will Kenny accept Maxwell's challenge? there's a backstage promo he cuts with the Bucks where he talked about, sort of the dark place he went to. The Bucks are sort of a little bit split on whether or not he should accept the challenge. He eventually does so, and we are locked. We do a good pull apart brawl to end the show, which they're always fun. And we're going to get Kenny versus Max next week for the title. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. I genuinely don't know. I think it might be too soon to do another Dynamite World title change, considering we just did that with Darby Allin. But at the same time, I think the growing feud that's going to be happening here is the one we've seen built up for several months now, coming off of Revolution, even going back that far, is Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay for the World Championship. And if that's the case, then it makes sense here to take the belt off of Max and put it on Kenny going in to, Redemption and All In. The only other thing I think you can do is run a 3-way at either Redemption or All In, which I think would either one of those would make sense. I don't know what they're going to do. And to me, that's when wrestling's at its best, when it's unpredictable, when you can't just start, looking at a show and saying, okay, I think this wrestler is going to win with this move in this way and move on to do this. That's where a lot of what happened at Forbidden Door went down. I make notes on every show that I watch, and I write down what the match is. I take notes of spots within the match, be it wrestling related or storyline related, but I usually will sort of predict how I think the match is going to end. I predicted the world title match would end, with MJF via Heat Seeker on tonight's episode. It doesn't make me super intuitive. I just thought he needed a win here. He needed to do it relatively cleanly, and that's what he got. I don't know what's going to happen with the Kenny match. I really don't. So again, that's when wrestling's at its peak, when that's how we get really more emotionally invested, by not knowing. The unpredictability is what draws a fandom in. It's always worked. It works for me every time. So I'm excited to see what they do next week at Beach Break. There's so many other matches at Beach Break that's been announced too. You've got Kyle Fletcher versus Konosuke Takeshita for the international title. You've got Tommaso Ciampa versus Chris Jericho. There is so much going on that's booked for Beach Break that it's becoming really, really interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens. The rest of the show, we had, again, mostly promo related. I'll just touch briefly on some of the things that happened. Andrade cuts a promo at the top of the stage. He's, reaffirming his intentions on MJF. Don Callis' family comes out and jumps him. Brian Cage gets the last few shots, which is going to lead to Collision. Andrade El Idolo versus Brian Cage. Makes sense. We were definitely going to get more stuff being done with the Don Callis family after Andrade turned on them. So we're going to have that probably stretch out for a little bit longer than just Collision. But yeah, that happened here. The next match we had was Kevin Knight versus Lio Rush for the TNT Championship. Knight won via what could be a new finisher for him that's, a non-top rope finisher, especially against smaller build opponents. It was sort of like a short arm into a rock bottom. I liked it. It worked well against Rush, but Rush is a smaller competitor, so a competitor with just a medium build like Kevin Knight can pull that off relatively easily. I don't think he's pulling that off against, let's say, if he had to go against a fellow DCF member like Mark Davis, Jake Doyle, Lance Archer. That's not gonna work. So, but I do like when wrestlers, especially prominent wrestlers, have multiple finishers that can be bought into. It shows that there are multiple ways for a match to end, especially against multiple competitor types. I like that. Will Ospreay's adopted it with, multiple moves on his part. He's got the Hidden Blade. He's got the Tiger Driver for special occasions. He's got Stormbreaker. I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, he's got the Death Ground now. So there's that's where I think things work really well for top guys, is when they can have multiple ways for a match to believably end. It makes fans buy into false finishes better. It makes them a little bit less predictable and one-dimensional. I like it. The match itself was very good. Lio Rush is become really, really over. I will affirm that I was wrong about his drugged up Gollum gimmick. It's working. The crowd is hot for it. The California crowd gave multiple Lio Rush chants throughout this match. The guy is over. So yeah, keep putting him on TV. It is working. So well done AEW there as well. After the match, Darby Allin comes out to confront Kevin Knight, asks for a TNT title match, or, quote, what happened at Forbidden Door will keep happening. And Knight comes close to accepting. Don Callis jumps in and says, no, not ever. Darby, you're a criminal. Criminal behavior doesn't get rewarded. So, no, you are not getting a TNT title match with Kevin Knight. Darby basically says, you've dug your own grave. So that feud's going to continue. I expect that to culminate at Redemption with some kind of match. I don't think it'll necessarily be a gimmick match, but I think we actually will probably get to do a singles match at Redemption, and then I actually think we'll probably do something like a coffin match at All In between these two competitors. That to me seems like a good logical build and a way to further that story that's been building since Double or Nothing. So let's do that. We had a Ciampa promo backstage to hype Beach Break. He was attacked by Chris Jericho with a trash can. They brawl in the backstage area. They brawl to the outside of the arena, where eventually Tommaso Ciampa tries to use a power drill on Chris Jericho. Jericho eventually jumps off with a crossbody off of the inside of a ring truck onto Ciampa and a couple security guards. Sort of building up the intensity in this feud. I'm not super into it, but I'm not out on it either. So I know some people are a little bit bitter that how great Tommaso Ciampa is being used on Chris Jericho right now. I'm not one of those. I grew up a Jericho guy. I can acknowledge, however, that his star has dimmed as he's gotten older, and the orbit of Jericho has not exactly translated into success for everyone. What up, Sammy Guevara and Action Andretti? Even Big Bill and Brian Keith. Again, Big Bill leaving AEW certainly doesn't help that perception, but I'm interested to see the match. I think it'll be great. Tommaso Ciampa has been fantastic since his arrival in AEW. I don't think that's going to change in this matchup. Looking forward to it. We get the aforementioned Bucks and Kenny promo backstage. Let us into the Death Riders of Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay in their first iteration together, especially with Will Ospreay having the Death Rider emblem on his tights now, taking on the swirl of Blake Christian and Lee Johnson. You had Will Ospreay get the win here for the Death Riders with the Hidden Blade. Not a lot to report from this match. It was more of just a showcase for Mox and Ospreay as the newly minted Death Riders team. As I mentioned, Will is sporting the Death Rider patch on now, so he's clearly all in there. Fine match, but really just meant to solidify that Will's a Death Rider and they're a significant force together. Now we had a post-pay-per-view promo from Cope and Cage talking about Jay White's involvement and Christian reaffirming he has a problem with Jay White stemming from before Jay White got injured, and that problem still exists today. So that's going to have to be figured out. And we get a Jay White in-ring promo sort of celebrating his return back. Takes a couple digs at the Death Riders and Ospreay, talking about how the fans seemingly don't want to be taken out from under the yoke of the Death Riders as they did beforehand, and calls Will Ospreay the biggest fraud in the business, laying the groundwork for a future feud there, which I love when they do that. Seeds being planted always leads to a better product, so that's great. But mainly focuses on the dogs and David Finlay, calls David Finlay a Nepo baby bitch boy. So that's going to clearly be the first feud for the Bang Bang Gang, is going to be against the dogs and David Finlay. Given they're doing a match with the Bang Bang Gang and Cope and Cage against Shane Taylor Promotions based on the following promo that happens after this one. Again, like I said, a lot of promos in this show. Shane Taylor Promotions versus Cope and Bang Bang Gang on Collision. Obviously, they're going to probably have Christian get involved there. I think we may end up seeing at Redemption Cope and Cage versus the Bang Bang Gang for those tag team championships. Fun. I'm interested in that. Then that brings us to our final match of the evening. Their Survival of the Fittest for the AEW TBS Championship. We had Micah, Queen Aminata, Chris Statlander, Persephone, Harley Cameron, and Hikaru Shida all vying in an elimination match here for the AEW TBS Championship. I was stunned at the order of elimination. Harley Cameron going out first to a razor's edge type of move from Persephone, I Harley was my second pick to win this match. So the idea, and the crowd loves her. I love her. Great personality, really improved in ring stuff, great at everything she does as far as character work, and has no qualms making an ass of herself to be funny. And coincidentally, then as a result, doesn't make an ass out of herself. I hate her losing first. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Um, Justice for Harley. Now, the rest of the order of elimination goes Micah is eliminated by Hikaru Shida. Queen Aminata gets knocked out by Persephone. Persephone is then eliminated by Chris Statlander. And then the finish comes when Hikaru Shida has an ankle lock on Chris Statlander. Stat claws her way underneath the ropes to the apron area. Persephone lays her out with the TBS Championship. Then that allows Stat to believably pass out to the combo ankle lock move that Shida locks in, and Hikaru Shida, as I predicted, is your reigning TBS champion now that Willow Nightingale is still out with injury. Shida will carry that belt on going forward. Love that. This makes perfect sense. We needed somebody with Shida's level of resume to elevate that championship a bit more. It provides a good ready-made feud with Willow when she gets back. She's got a ready-made feud with Statlander, obviously, based on their history. She could even go and do a program with Harley based on some of the stuff they've done before. This is perfect. I also said that there could have been some balance in alignment for heel versus face women's championship holders, and I stand by that, but Shida, again, is the logical and most sensible choice here. So I'm okay throwing alignment concerns out the window for right now and focusing on the best person to hold the TBS championship right now, and that's Hikaru Shida. So, Kenny announced at the end of the show afterwards that he is going to engage in that world championship opportunity forever removal stipulation with Max next week. Show ends in the pull apart. But that's our Dynamite for July 1st. Obviously, a lot's happened. What did you like about this? Did you like the Kenny Omega stipulation being added in here again so soon after it being used on Hangman? Do you like that we're doing the World Championship match at Beach Break next week, with such a short build? Did you like how the TBS Championship match went? How did you feel about the Mark Briscoe MJF match? Let me know in the comments what you guys thought about this. Interested to get your feedback. I'll be checking out Collision this week. I don't know if I'll do a review of that, but I will definitely be doing a preview of Beach Break before it happens. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the coming days, probably early next week. Thank you as always for watching. Really appreciate your support of the channel as I continue to try to build this out. We need more AEW coverage on social media and the interwebs as a whole. Happy to do it for you guys. Please continue to watch. I really appreciate all of you. Thanks so much. I am Christian for Duality of Wrestling. Catch you on the next one, guys.